Hello, hello. Welcome. I am your cool nerdy daddy, Sam. I'm a visual artist. I paint, I draw, I also write. And today I am going to be writing my tabletop role-playing game. It's called Wayward Wardens, New York City. And for those who may not know, tabletop role-playing games are games where we roll dice and tell stories. Or draw cards and tell stories, but use some sort of game mechanic and tell a story together. So D&D is a tabletop role-playing game, Tales from the Loop is tabletop role-playing game, Monster of the Week, all of these different systems are tabletop role-playing games. The game that I'm writing is based on a tabletop role-playing game system called The Between, and that is published by the Gauntlet Publishing Company. It's written by Jason Cordova. That game itself is a Victorian monster hunters game. It's very much inspired by things like Penny Dreadful, season 1 of Penny Dreadful. There's a werewolf character. There is someone who has dark demonic powers that they can commune with. There's a wealthy individual who can exploit their connections to move the investigations forward. So in that game, you're playing hunters who are investigating threats in Victorian London that are supernatural, and you're trying to resolve them, keep everyone safe. And throughout the gameplay, it is revealed that there is a mastermind plotting things behind the scenes. It's not just a coincidence that all of these difficulties have been popping up for our hunters. And it culminates in a really satisfying narrative arc. And one of my favorite things about this system is that it uses what's called an emergent mystery mechanic. And emergent mystery means that rather than there being a predetermined conclusion that I, as the keeper, am trying to lead the players to, that there is sort of an almost infinite realm of possibilities that we discover through gameplay. And together as a table, once we've amassed enough clues, we look at the question we're trying to answer. So maybe in one case it might be, is the vampire old or young? Was it recently made, or has it been a vampire for a long time? And we look at the clues that we've collected. We have an out-of-character conversation, kind of like a writer's room on a TV show. And we collaborate to say, with the context that we have, with the way that we've investigated this and what we've found, what do we think the answer to this question is? And we work together, we find the answer, aligning it with as many clues as possible. We roll the dice to see if we're right, and how dangerous and risky it will be to resolve the threat after we've answered that question. So I'll link to some content below if you want to get to know more about that game and dive a little bit deeper into that system. But for now, that's kind of the basics of what you need to know. There's playbooks for the different hunters. Like I said, there's this dark demonic one, there's the werewolf one, there's an explorer. They're all hunters, and they investigate these supernatural threats in Victorian London. It's a really fantastic game. It has a lot of great brooding ambiance and different thematic elements that really make it very satisfying both to play and run. And I felt very inspired by this system. And I personally have been seeking a modern day Monster Hunter game. And I've played a bunch of different systems, and nothing has really scratched the itch of what I'm looking for, where it's tightly thematic, but also in modern times, where there's built-in narrative arcs that are designed to evolve throughout the course of a campaign rather than just a one-shot or a short series. I'm really interested in the depth that you're able to achieve through these playbooks in the between. So the game that I'm writing is called Wayward Wardens, New York City. And I'm going to read you this pitch right now for my game so you can kind of get a little inspiration for what it's going to be like. In the city that never sleeps, will you chase your dreams or be chased out of town by living nightmares? Wayward Wardens, New York City thrusts you into a larger-than-life, supernatural version of modern New York. Every day, thousands of people flock to the city to see if they can make it here. And every day, thousands of people leave defeated and drained. On one block, a romance blossoms, while the next street over, a tragedy unfolds. Across town, a wish comes true, while another dream is dashed to pieces. The full spectrum of humanity exists simultaneously within this glorious, chaotic concrete jungle. But wardens like you know there's even more strangeness simmering under the surface than most people realize. Witches, cryptids, vampires, fairies, demons, and Lord knows what else walk among us. And someone has to keep them all in line. The secretive and powerful Veil Preservation Council monitors hundreds of guilds throughout the world. Their wardens are tasked with a single goal: to preserve the boundary between the supernatural and the mundane worlds. But someone is working to upend that delicate balance, a mastermind who won't rest until it all comes crashing down. So that's our basic premise for my game. You're playing these wardens that have been given some amount of authority by this International Veil Preservation Council that is very bureaucratic. So, they're not here breathing down your neck all the time, but there are some rules you're going to be following. Our wardens need to be working towards resolving these mysteries, threats, complications that are supernatural in ways that keep the veil intact, that keep the general public oblivious, that effectively cover things up to a reasonable degree, explain things away, right? We're not going to be leveling Gotham every week in this game. We want to have some subtlety, some smartness. And I'm going to go now into a section of the game design called Cats, which is also very similar and a part of all the systems that Jason Cordova writes. It stands for concept, aim, tone, and safety. So the concept for our game is that Wayward Wardens is a tabletop role-playing game, remember, dice and stories, that is about a group of extraordinary people called the Wardens of Cordova Court. They live in modern New York City, where magic thrives, strange creatures roam the bustling streets, and something unexpected waits around every corner. And then you're under this watchful eye of the Veil Preservation Council. You're investigating various supernatural events and kind of gradually becoming aware of this mastermind who's pulling the strings behind the scenes. There's not a single media touchstone for this game. Wayward Wardens takes inspiration from TV shows like Angel the Series and Lucifer, as well as games like Monster of the Week, which is an urban horror game by Michael Sands, and the Unsleeping City series from Dimension 20. It's also influenced by books like Annette Marie's The Guild Codex Spellbound series, Holly Black's Folk of Air trilogy, and Lee Bardugo's Galaxy Stern series. Lastly, and most importantly, it's inspired by the muse that is New York City. Its buildings, including the Hotel Chelsea, which directly inspired Cordova Court in this game, the history, sights, smells, and citizens here. You don't need to be familiar with any of these sources to play the game, but I would really love if you bring your own unique perspective of what this city has to offer into your gameplay. You will need a copy of the Between in order to understand the mechanics of this game, so keep that in mind. The aim of our game in this is that our characters are trying to keep New York City relatively safe and stable by investigating and resolving these supernatural events and threats, working to preserve that delicate thin veil of balance between the arcane and mundane worlds. Now, as players, our aim is a little bit different. Our aim as players is to learn more about our characters' mysterious pasts and to develop their heroic arcs, as well as to paint a vivid picture of our version of New York City, which is a responsibility that's shared by everyone around the table. We're very much building a collaborative world here. It's not that the keeper or the GM or whatever you want to call them is controlling all of the setting. Everyone's participating in populating the world that we inhabit. Tone. Much like the real New York, the settings and characters of Wayward Wardens are frequently larger than life. You never know what you're going to run into while you're walking down a single sidewalk block. Don't be afraid to go big. You are in the Big Apple, after all. The tone of this game shifts from lighthearted and witty to suspenseful and dramatic, depending on the phase of the game. Humor and banter are encouraged, but make sure to treat serious moments as such, especially if it's a plot point related to a warden's character arc. Safety, just real quick, we'll touch on the fact that bad things in difficult subject matter is going to come up in this game. Wayward Wardens is also going to lend itself to romantic plot lines, but romance isn't required to play this game or enjoy it. There's a great safety tools section in the Between. Right now I just have page to come, but I'll drop it in the area below the video, but just review those safety tools before the game begins. So I think what I want to do today, I've been working on my playbooks gradually, and I've arrived at the point where it's time to start working on the threats. It's time for me to start writing the things that these wardens are going to be investigating. So one of the threats that I have in mind, and the one that I want to work on today, is titled, working title, the Gowanus Goliath. And what that's going to be is a sort of monster threat, where it's centered in a neighborhood called Gowanus in New York. So what we're going to start by doing is reviewing the anatomy of a threat in a between type game. So I've used a worksheet here, which comes from this Bren Bisogno article, What I Learned from the Between Threat Writing Contest, or The Anatomy of a Threat. So there's definitely some great resources. That's one thing I really love about Jason Cordova's games, Gauntlet published games. Wayward Wardens is going to be what's called a carved from Brindlewood game, which is referencing Jason Cordova's game Brindlewood Bay, which is also fantastic, and I can tell you about some other time if you'd like to hear about it. And that community is so creative and generative. They love remixing, reworking, adding their own touches to things. There's always new homebrewed stuff getting built, and Jason Cordova and the Gauntlet Publishing Group is really supportive of that, and it's just really inspiring and beautiful, and is what has gotten me to this point in my creative process. So if you're interested in learning more about game writing, game design, and this type of system appeals to you, definitely check out the Gauntlet. And Sprigs and Kindling, which is listed right here, is a community published free zine of community written materials related to Gauntlet games. So there's all kinds of juicy tidbits in there. It's free. My art has been in there. This is my art, by the way. I mentioned I'm an artist. This is one of my larger charcoal drawings. I also do paintings as well, oil paints, acrylic, mostly acrylic, watercolors as well. I just like making stuff. So it's definitely a fun thing to dive into. So a threat. Today, I said the title of our threat is going to be the Gowanus Goliath, at least as a working title. Presenting the threat. This is where we write everything that we want the keepers to tell the players about the threat at hand. No need to be sly. Give them lots to go on. You want to make sure the questions and opportunities, so remember I talked about questions before, how we work as a group to answer the question. That's a formal capital Q question. And opportunities is how we resolve the questions. That makes sense given this intro. So I think right now what I'm going to do is just kind of write a loose skeleton of what I want this threat to be about. So this is, I'll copy and paste it in here because I started a little draft before of how I want the threat to kind of arrive in our wardens' lives. The Gowanus Canal is being dredged, it's being cleaned up. Dredgers report sightings and signs of a strange whale-like creature. The area is being redeveloped. This is currently happening now in New York City, and the waterway is being cleaned up after decades of pollution and neglect. And the neighborhood's original residents are being priced out of their homes. This morning, the body of a real estate developer was found floating belly up in the water. So that's sort of how I'm going to lay out the basics of this threat. I have a creature that's strange. There's some reports of it. We know that these dredgers have seen it. That's like a little lead for our players. We know that there's all of this change happening in the area, and we know that now there's a body found. So something happened to them. Perhaps these are related. We need to make sure that if they are, it gets cleaned up nicely. So I think now I'm going to switch to my research window so you can see kind of how I go about learning about things to gather the inspiration for what this will continue to evolve into. So let's switch. All right. There we are. Gowanus. Like I said, it's a neighborhood in New York City. It's in the borough of Brooklyn. And it was named after a Canarsie Indian word, the Gowani, the sleeper. And it was settled by Dutch farmers in what's Brooklyn now. The ponds powered mills. It was a really important scene during the American Revolutionary War. So like all of this is feeding into the character of New York, the character of Gowanus in this thread. It was turned from a creek into a canal to become this hub for manufacturing and shipping. And they dumped wastewater into the into the canal, and it came to be defined, in fact, by the pollution in this canal. Then the industry kind of pulled out, and in the 1940s, it became a site of NYC housing projects, which were built to house, in part, to house returning World War II veterans. So we can see already that there's sort of this big hand of industry and government controlling what's happening in this area that was previously belonged to the indigenous peoples. The water is definitely polluted by sewage, by extensive coal and gas manufacturing. Also, there's alleged mafia ground dumping things. Again, this is Wikipedia, so we're using this as inspiration. We're not going to be putting this in any, college reports that we're turning in for grades or anything, but getting a sense of the place that we're writing about. So, it was this very polluted area, and then it got rezoned. Again, the city comes in and says, we're going to change something. Residents and community groups expressed concern over the sewage outflow that rezoning could create. And there's a lot of tension in this area. It's a Superfund site, which is a designation by the EPA that provides a lot of money for cleanup, but also usually indicates a level of contamination that is what I would say is often unlikely to be completely ameliorated. It's very, very, very intense environmental contamination and pollution. So then a bunch of co-working spaces popped up, more restaurants, there's galleries, and now currently it's becoming very developed. There's a lot of really new fancy apartment buildings getting built there, like so many cranes, so many construction sites. So it's just an area where there's a lot of things intersecting. And that's why I think it's really exciting to set this story here and have this creature sort of be at the center of all of those intersections and ask our wardens to engage with all of those different stakeholders, suspects, various things going on, and to figure out how to resolve and address it. All right, so let me bounce out now. And I want to look at Gowanus. I know there was a whale that went in the Gowanus Canal. And that is the other thing this is loosely based on. So CW, the whale does not survive this. It's too polluted. It doesn't end well. So we're just gonna take that into our hearts and not carry it too heavily, but it's something that I want to be referencing with this. So let's take a look here and see who do we think is good? Underwater New York. That sounds fun. Let's look at that. All right. So all right, here it is, 2007. It's talking about minke whales, which can go underwater for a very long time without coming up for another breath, and that it had pinged on some sonar previously, and they didn't really know what it was. But now in 2007, there was this big storm, and also a young whale headed into this canal. So people spotted it, but there was also it was in the canal, which, as I mentioned, super fun, very inhospitable place for life to exist. Here they describe the specific industries that played a role in polluting the Gowanus Canal, which is not just coal, but the tanneries were really, really bad for it. So like turning things into leather. So the whale went to the mouth of the canal. It was a 12-foot long whale, although this is saying now it didn't really swim all the way through it. But it's intriguing, right? This idea of a creature ending up in this polluted built environment that the humans have made. And in this case, they are working to clean it up. But how much have they done? We'll see. Here they're showing that there's this Fudgy the Whale cake. And there's just a lot of, oh goodness, this is talking about hunting whales. That sounds too stressful, I think, for me. So there's just some interesting stories about whales being in the canal. That's kind of inspiring in my mind here. Things getting pinged on sonar, not coming up for a long time. The other thing I know and I'm interested in is kind of like the pollution of Gowanus. So I know there's something in Gowanus called black mayo. Don't ask me how I know that, but black mayonnaise. Okay, here it is. I won't use the AI overview because no, thank you. But what is the Gowanus Canal black mayo? And it's sort of this roving dark sludge that makes its way through the oily waters. So I think I'm starting to get a picture in my head of what this very large aquatic creature could be looking like. It has this like dense, oily nature to it. So they're saying here that here's a sample, a core sample. So they went down and, like stuck something into the bottom of the canal. And this is what they came up with. Black mayonnaise. It's quote, the result of chemical waste that was discharged from the industries that operated along the canal, as well as by New York City sewage and street runoff. Ew. So that is gnarly, frankly. Liquid tar, decomposed organic matter, and sewage, which is what make it this black color. A 10-foot high layer of black mayonnaise lays over the original native sediment at the bottom of the canal. 10 feet. Just let that sink in for a second. Is it dangerous? Obviously, yes. You don't want to be near it. It's not good for you to be close to it. Just like it wasn't good for the whale and for any creatures that lived in there. So they've been doing dredging in the canal, trying to clear this out, but it's sort of a very long process. I don't think that we've, see 2021, they're still scooping it up. So there's just, there's a lot going on in Gowanus Canal. There's a lot going on in the Gowanus Canal. Oh, here, look, a little shipwreck or something. Okay, I think we're doing all right here, but I want to switch back to my writing window. Okay. So, paint the scene. In Carved from Brindlewood games, a paint the scene is a question that we ask the whole table that helps us populate a place that we're in. So if it's a painting school, we might say there's lots of hustle and bustle as the students prepare their final works for the semester. how do we see that they are crumbling under the stress? And then everyone in our group would narrate something that is available to our players that they would see or hear or smell. It's really important to encourage the use of all different senses with the paint the scene question as much as possible. So paint the scene for this is, I think would be great to point out the tension between these shiny new buildings and the polluted and just messy past of the Gowanus area. So in the canal weaves between the gleaming new high-rises. How have the developers attempted to spruce this super fun site? Super fun site up, and how is the pollution seeping through? So I'll play with the wording for that, but I think that's basically where I want to start with pointing out that there's these beautiful new buildings, and then there's this canal that is entrenched with the pollution that has been building up for over a century. Establishing question. Okay, this is another key thing to that emergent mystery mechanic I was talking about. This question is going to be directed to one of the hunters, in my case, one of the wardens, which will invoke their drives or emotional connections to the threat. So we want to make the hunters care. We want to make the wardens care in this line. Why do they care? And how, probably in some ways, how do we know it's a supernatural thing? So in my case, sure, someone ended up dead, but why are the wardens here and not NYPD? Right, that's the question. So I'm going to say, what detail about the corpse indicates that it was not killed by a person, something like that maybe? Or how can, what do you notice about the surrounding, about the body that makes you believe a gigantic animal might be to blame? Or maybe the surrounding area. So basically in this sentence, I want to provoke my players into thinking that not only is this person dead, but they've been killed by an animal, and an animal that could not be normal and would not survive in this area, right? It's inhospitable to life. So maybe that's something here, like, I'm gonna put a little note of inhospitable to life. Because if we're driving that point home in the paint the scene, and then suddenly in our establishing question, we're noticing this place is inhospitable to life, but clearly something alive that was not a human killed this person or was involved in the death of this person. I think that's maybe what we need to go with, because I do want to keep it possible for my players that the monster didn't actually kill this person. So it's going to be a little bit of a dance. It's a little bit of a dance with ambiguity and framing. So I think this is more or less what I'm trying to do with my establishing question. And now I'm going to have a sip of iced tea because I'm halfway through my 1 hour game writing today. Oh. Hydrate. This is very delicious. It's the Smith Tea Blackberry Jasmine iced tea. And I would definitely recommend you try some. So good. Okay. Delicious. Oh, I just checked now because, as I said, I'd worked on some notes previously. My establishing question was more related to the creature. So this is another possibility. I'm going to paste it in here. It was, how do you know the creature is sentient and capable of communicating? Because again, I want to leave options open for this Goliath to receive compassion, to be treated with respect and not just hunted down. I want to encourage my players to deeply consider all of these different layers of existence that are happening here. So I'll drop that in there. I think we're going to pop down further right now to the questions and opportunities. So question number 1, I think with this one, I want it to just be 2 questions. So sometimes in these games, you'll have what's called a threshold question where you need to answer that first, and then you have to answer another one. So in the between, there's a threat called the Creature of Premorn Gardens. And there's sightings of a half fish, half human running around London. And the first question your group has to answer is this a real creature or is it a hoax? And then depending on the answer to that question, you unlock a second question. So if it's a hoax, who's behind it? And if it's a creature, how can you convince it to leave? What does it want? In mine, the creature is real. That's the fiction that we're working with. So I don't think I'm going to do a threshold question. I think I'm just going to do 2 questions of different complexities. Complexities in this case means how many clues do you need to have to do a flat roll, to roll your dice with no bonus. So here it says complexity 2 to 8, an even number. I think for the lower tiered one, I'm going to do a complexity of 6. And I think I would like it to be where does the creature live? Where's its lair? So that's our more basic one, where you would resolve it. So opportunity here. Once the question is answered, once our players answer the question of where does the creature live, you can then resolve the threat by infiltrating its lair and capturing or killing it. Or maybe let's killing it and then capturing, or killing it, capturing it, killing it. Capturing it, killing it, Or I think those need to be your options with this one. And I think because we really want to drive home that there are things that the sense of place of whose existence takes priority in a place, I want to add a little bit of extra difficulty, which is that all rolls to kill the creature in its home will be made with disadvantage. Because, again, you're not on your turf, you're on its turf. And I think I really want that to be clear. So here, okay, let's see. This is just talking about threshold questions. We don't need that, but I do need, all right, but I do need to copy this question, paste it down here. And now we're gonna rate our second one, which is gonna be complexity 8. That's gonna be the one where we are learning about the creature, where we're investigating more deeply what's really going on here. Not just where does it live, but like what's the story underneath. So here I want it to be, what are the creature's true origins and what drove it to violence? Because in this case, it's perhaps not a violent creature normally. In fact, otherwise there would be bodies all the time, we would think. But something drove it to this point. So here it's going to be a more complex question, but we get a different opportunity. We get to resolve the threat by empathizing with the creature and convincing it to relocate, or convincing the developers to preserve its habitat. Which I think maybe that second part actually is me painting too much here. It's assuming that the habitat threat is what's causing the violence. What drove it to violence against the developer? Let's put that there. So convincing the developers to accommodate its needs. I keep putting, I keep doing the it is when I just need to put its. So that I think is our second opportunity, where you get to resolve the threat by empathizing with the creature in a way that is more compassionate, but it takes more time. It takes time to do that type of work. And so that's why that's reflected in this increased complexity here. So I think that's what we're doing. Yes. I don't know if empathizing with the creature is enough. I feel like it's maybe related to like soothing the creature here, where it's buying yourself some time to come up with a final resolution. Now that I have one sip, I'm so thirsty. All right. Good. Those are our questions and opportunities for now. The threat, a description of the big bad and how they're going to cause problems for the hunters, wardens, and London, New York City. So in our case, the threat is the Goliath. That's what I'm calling it. Although now I'm wondering, I think it's time to go do a little bit more research and just to see. I need to be careful during this because I have an extremely bad shark phobia. And no hate on the sharks. I think just in a past life, I got eaten by a shark. Probably a lot of them because we were all fish before. So it's just a personal fear I have of mine. So I'm going to have to be gentle with myself, especially when there's images involved of creatures coming up from the deep that have teeth and could cause harm. Let's go to the research tab and see what we can find. Okay. First, I just want to look up the root of Goliath. I've been using this as the word. Okay, It's a giant from the book of Samuel. Don't necessarily love the biblical association. Probably going to be changing that. Let's see. So what about if we go and say Goliath, synonym. Let's come up with a different name for this creature. Behemoth, Colossus, giant, Leviathan, monster, and titan. Obviously, I liked Goliath because of the alliteration. Oh, Goliath as in whale. Maybe it's specifically a whale thing? Where did... I swear... Oh, look, as in whale. Well, now I feel like I should keep it. Even though I don't love the biblical thing. Let's see, Goliath. Etymology. Uncovered splendor, giant exile. I do like that. I like the idea of it's being uncovered, that it's in exile. That feels aligned with this monster, you know? Maybe let's put Goliath etymology whale. Welcome to my process. So, let's see. I'm so confused. Why did am I making it up that Merriam-Webster said Goliath was whale? I'm keeping it. I took you down that rabbit hole and I'm gonna keep it, I think, because let's see, Leviathan is just unusually large. It does bring up a sort of horrific thing to mind for me. Very H.P. Lovecraft, although he was a racist jerk, so we're not going to take his position on things, but he did know how to write some scary stuff. Goliath, let's see, what else? Leviathan, colossal, as in unusual, another unusually large. Whopping, the whopping Gowanus creature. All right. I think we're gonna keep it for right now, rather than getting too bogged down here. But let me just do a real quick Leviathan and see what comes up. Okay. See, this is where I have to lean back because I never know what's gonna be on my screen, and I'm scared. All right. Oh, also from the Bible, although it says the Hebrew Bible, which I didn't realize they called it a Bible. I knew it was the Torah. Anyway, you learn new things all the time. So it was a powerful enemy of Babylon, the embodiment of chaos, threatening to eat the damned when their lives are over. In the end, it is annihilated. It's associated with the demon of the deadly sin of envy. That doesn't quite feel right to me. Let's see Goliath here. A Philistine giant in the book of Samuel. Giant status. David and Goliath. That one's such an interesting one because it's like, I like the tension here of our creature is the underdog, I think, in this situation. So I like kind of swapping it. Maybe we'll even call the developer David just to get playful with it and lean into that idea of who has power and who doesn't, and size and scale and all those things. So let's see. Goliath. This is like talking about how tall he would have been. Cool. Goliath's name. It's basically just saying it's sort of this very old name and they don't know when it came about, is what it looks like to me. All right, let's put Goliath whale again and see what we get. Whoa, not whale tail lock. What is, okay. Speculative evolution. It's a fandom. Okay. Not real. All right. Too many not alived whales. So let's look at Leviathan, or like Colossus. Let's see what happens. Oh, there actually is a Colossus whale. How big is it? It's extinct. Oh, really, this again, I have to be really careful. I'm leaning so far back in my chair. The heaviest animal ever? Ancient whale found in desert. That was bigger than the blue whale. Interesting. So let's learn about this whale. Let's look at this one, which I guess is saying maybe it's a correction of some stuff. Okay, here's our Goliath whale, and here's our blue whale. So, do they have teeth is the question I want to know. Oh my goodness, look. Oh, they're talking about hippos. Hippos using their fins and stuff to walk in water, their feet. This is so much about the weight. Is that really the most interesting thing? No. A sea giant. Okay. I'm playing a game called Dishonored, and I want to know about the whales in it because they're basically like aliens in it, and they're pretty scary. So again, if you're like me, maybe lean back from the screen. They're harvested for their bones. Oh my gosh, I got such a scare at the teeth on that one. Oh man, I'm so lame. All right, let's go on this Dishonored wiki and see. Whales are enormous water-bound creatures, hunted for their blubber, meat, bones, and most importantly, their oil. So I like the look of this whale, minus the blood. I think maybe we don't need to be quite that monstrous looking with our whale. But this, creatures of beauty and sadness, that feels right. This description feels right. And maybe what I'll look up too, I don't know how it works if I do another tab. Okay, good. I'm gonna go back to the Gowanus just to remember what's the indigenous, oh my goodness, group here. Okay, the Lenape. So I want to know and learn about, like, do they have legends about whales? Because let's see, since they lived here in Manhattan and in Brooklyn and were forced to leave, I am curious about the names of animals. Let's see. We're gonna double check everything we see here. As always, this is just real-time research, so don't get too upset if this website's not fully accurate. I'm gonna be double checking it. So let's just skip ahead to the whales and water creatures, keeping in mind that there might be scary things. Water bear is what they called a whale. Okay. Do we think that's good? Whale, maybe like legend or stories? Oh my goodness. Let's see. Powerful figure. Transforming and plucking whales from the ocean to share with humans. Talking about the Shinnecock. Very cool. I don't really get why I'm so mistrustful of this, like, Mr. Dawn. Show results with whale. I definitely want whale. Okay, it doesn't seem to be a thing that is at least super well available. So we'll go back to our Dishonored thing. I just wanted to make sure that if there was an opportunity to pull from more real world contextual examples, that's something I do want to do with this game. But for now, let's look at the Dishonored one. Creatures of beauty and sadness. I really like that. I'm wondering if we even pull it over here into our descriptor. I'm gonna make a note of that because I really like it. Creature of beauty and sadness. Supernatural animals associated with natural wonder, spirituality, and aesthetics. This is probably kind of hard for you all to read. I'm sorry, but I'll read it to you. Multiple fins, large sharp teeth, and barbels hanging down from their maws. So I do know that in Brindlewood Bay, there's a very strange whale-like creature. And it has a lot of eyes. Too many eyes is how it's described. I wonder if I could pull that in here. Perhaps it's a remnant of that. I'm not opposed to this whale being quite scary, as I think nature should be quite scary to us as humans. So too many eyes. Let's say I do like the barbels hanging from jaws. This says that the barbels sit just behind their eyes with, let's see, a mass of tentacles hanging around a whale's mouth. So barbels hanging from jaws or a mass of tentacles. Great. They have counter shading, which means that they're dark on top and lighter on the bottom. And they teeth and baleen. Could be interesting here. I don't hate it. I like the idea that it's a creature that could feed more peacefully through filter feeding or could feed more active predator-wise. They don't have a single fused blowhole, but retain two behind each eye, so it has to put its head out of the water to breathe. I don't really think we need that. That feels kind of boring. All right, let's go back to our writing screen. We've got about 5 minutes left, so we'll take a couple notes from that, and then we'll wrap up for today. Okay. All right. So teeth and baleen here is interesting to me. I'm also interested in this like oily, sludgy blackness of the black mayo. Although I do feel generally I don't want to rely on tropes of black is monstrous. That's such a problematic trope in so many things. It's just in this particular case, the black mayo and the pollution that's evident in this water is part of that thematic element. So that's why we're tying it in here. All right, so let's see. Got this like oily, sludgy black surface I like the idea of some sort of almost alien communication method. So like, are they telepathic? Perhaps. Are they, and like, if so, with words or just images? That's something I've played with in one of the mysteries I've already written, is having a character that doesn't speak and only communicates through drawing and writing. So I like playing with these ways of communication beyond what we would normally think of. So telepathic with words or just images, or must use a tool. So maybe they're, again, like I was describing with that other character who's mute, maybe they use a tool to communicate the way we've, as humans, have the dogs with the buttons that say treat. So that's something here. I think it's if left unattended, more bodies will pile up. We'll float in the canal. And eventually might cause mass panic, especially as new residents arrive. So this idea that if our wardens don't deal with what the problem that's in front of them, the pressure's gonna mount. Quote from the threat, if applicable. I'm not sure. Oh, look here. This needs to go down here. I was putting it in the wrong spot. It goes, if the hunters ignore investigating the threat. So if the wardens ignore investigating the threat, this will happen. I'm not sure our threat does have a quote here. I think in our case, it might be more of a sound thing, like the sound of 1,000 crying whales or something. So some sort of a scary, dissonant sound. And I think with that, we're going to wrap for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me while I worked on Wayward Wardens, New York City. I'm excited to have made some progress on the Gowanus Goliath, to getting one step closer to my players actually getting to investigate this world. So I'll see you again soon. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy whatever games you're playing. Drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for new things to try. And you can come back to this channel whenever if you would like to see more tabletop role-playing game writing and creation content, game design. I'm also going to be playing some single solo TTRPGs, which involve all sorts of interesting tables and storytelling mechanics. So please come on back. Again, I'm Sam. I'm your, let's see, did my tape come off? Yes. I am your cool nerdy daddy. And I hope you have a great day, my lovelies. All right. Bye.